There we go.
Hey everyone, good to see you. Hey, here with Asher Segelken today from Good Green Creative, and we're so excited to talk about values-driven branding. So if you're here with us or you're watching the replay, get ready, buckle up. We're going to be jumping into a concept that needs to be understood for whether you're in ministry or in some kind of business, especially if you're leading a cause or a company doing good in the world. Like we want you to have all the information you need to jump right into a clarity on your branding and really have that oomph and that push. And Asher, I know you and I have worked on some projects together. You're part of the Giver Marketing Network. We're streaming in to the Kingdom Warriors holders group right now, and there's thousands and thousands of people potentially watching. So we're excited to kind of be with you and have you as a guest to share with us about values driven branding and how that associates with your marketing and your communication and your leadership. And really, how we do what we do is just as important as what we actually do, right? And kind of the motivation behind it. So, Asher, thank you again. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to share anything, look up Asher on Facebook and email him when his email address pops up on the screen later, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have a roundtable discussion, but check him out on Facebook for sure. There's his email address coming across the screen.
Yep.
But Asher, jump in, man. Let's go. Let's do this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Timothy, thank you so much for having me and for just inviting me to share what I've learned uh, just with working in the marketing space and really working with churches, faith-based organizations, socially conscious businesses just across the country. And so values-driven branding is something that it's a concept that I've seen just win just across the board. And today, what I'm really hoping is that I can just raise our awareness of what that looks like, how we interact with it, and just really pull out some marketplace examples that are affecting us on a daily basis, and then have a conversation on leadership towards the end of our time today. So let's see here. So I have my slides up there. How do we get them to go live here? There we go. Awesome. Thank you. So the first thing I want to say is that people don't buy products, they buy values. Everyone's a value shopper, but what we value is different. We might want something warm, we can go to LL Bean or we can go to Patagonia. We can get the same value with a very big differentiation on values. We can get technology, be social online. We can choose a church, a sandwich, a car. And the fundamental value of all those products is satisfied by the increasingly competitive and complex ecosystem of redundancy that is the free market. Yet, what drives people to buy one product over another? Today, brand values underpin the actual value of the products we've come to depend on and cherish. Today, we're going to be looking at 3 examples at the end. And at the end of the presentation, I'll give you a prompt on how you can discover and rediscover your own values as well. So let's start with a company that I think really does a great job of values-driven branding, and that's Apple. Apple lives at the corner of liberal arts and technology. Steve Jobs said this during one of his last keynote addresses. But this isn't Apple's mission statement or motto. They've just cycled through a few over the years. But this is something that he said that I think stood out during one of his product launches. And I think it really unearths a lot of what makes Apple successful. And so Apple sells a wide array of products, but one product stands out to me as a significant proof of the prevalence of how values really does most of the selling for a company like Apple, and that's the Apple Watch. It's a phone accessory that does nothing more than your phone does, but it adds mobility. It promotes a small array of health features. It can manage your phone, and you can manage all of that from your phone. The value Apple relies on the values of liberal arts to life and the idea of bettering life and discovering our world again through technology. Yet, Apple Watch seems like a small, meaningless product in the scope of this mission, right? The key value of the watch is health and safety. Maintaining your health and keeping you connected to the infrastructure that can save your life when it's tough to keep your phone on hand. You get lost on a hike, you get caught in a riptide. You can be tracking your fitness. And then if you're in a tight spot, you can also call for help. It's an incredible, incredible little tool. And really, if you're looking at it, I should really add a third value to this. It's health, safety, and connectivity. Those are the three things that make the watch really work. It's what really sells us. Our lives are better and more informed because of a technological wrist accessory that gives us insight into our health and lets us call for help from anywhere. It also lets us connect with our friends and really kind of reduces the clutter of our phone. It's kind of incredible that just a small set of values is what sells this little, maybe 9mm extension of our phone.
Asher, I was thinking about something recently when I watched one of the commercials where
Yep.
I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Apple. I could be wrong. Maybe you can help me on this.
Yeah.
But somebody was either lost in the desert or out in the ocean or in a car accident
Yeah.
or something like that.
The car
And
one. Yeah.
their life was potentially saved because of this connectivity, and there was literally, like, it was a life and death situation. And that I for me to be able to remember that, of all the tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of commercials or promotions of any kind, it's kind of amazing when it's done well in a story form and it brings
Yep.
the values and the benefits to those who are watching. It's pretty interesting just to know that we can remember some of these more than others, right?
For sure. And the thing I always look at when I'm looking at like Apple, because I watch all the keynotes. I love what Apple's doing. Um, it's the only product that they really sell almost exclusively through story, with maybe some light touches on functionality. One of the things they always talk about is I think it's the heart feature, people getting AFib detection for the first time through their Apple Watch, and how that sent them to the doctor's office to get life-saving treatment, or how they were on a hike and they broke their leg or something happened and they were able, to call for help, to have emergency services. The thing I think that you're talking about is the fall detection and the crash detection, which now means that any and all tech that Apple has is going to detect whether or not that you're in a crash or that you fall down. And
So
it's
how does this relate to our values specifically? I know you're going to get to that,
for sure.
but give us a little teaser here. Like, how does that relate to, let's say we're a ministry leader or a business leader, and we're like, okay, what does the Apple Watch have to do with our brand?
Well, I think it's a great example of what it means to have a deliverable that doubles down on your values. So this could go into the conversation on ministry initiative, what kind of ministry initiatives that you want to actually plan out or execute from different things. If we're looking at socially conscious, ventures that are for profit, it could also be, how you express that. You have, socially, conscious funding. You have just all of these. You have a lot of different ways that you can execute upon your values. So for instance, a great example comes from a church that I work with. It's Refuge Church in Jacksonville. Go look them up. But they are all about adoption. The pastor has adopted, how many has Pastor Josh adopted? Maybe 2, 3, 4 kids. They have an adoption ministry, and they really are focused on providing support for families that are currently going through the adoption process or have adopted kids. And so I would say a good third of their ministry is just focused on foster families. And maybe about a quarter of their church is foster families and their kids.
Sounds like they put their time, their focus, their attention, maybe even their finances, uh, and really leaned into that as a value,
For sure.
like value flavor or a value focus to their brand. Is that
For sure. And it really plays well into their idea of just a general mainstream church as well, because you have the spirit of adoption that they would say that that God has invited all of us into, that he has come
right?
to with that spirit of adoption. And so really they found a really great issue that not only addresses something that's important to the pastor, but important to Jacksonville, important to the state of Florida, but also allows for him to really pivot into even more evangelistic contexts as well. It's a really great pivot.
Oh, that makes sense. I like that. Wow, that's super interesting. Well, thanks for sharing that example, Asher. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to sidetrack your
Nope.
visuals here, but I wanted to make sure there was a tie-in, and it totally makes sense.
Oh
Totally.
yeah. And I appreciate you just sort of prodding at that point, because every product that Apple makes is an initiative on its values.
It
And
has
so,
been to this point, right? I mean, they've been pretty good about that.
yeah. And if you really look at some of the quotes from Steve Jobs, like the one I highlighted, and you look at everything that Apple does, whether it's a computer, a phone, a watch, an iPad, even something like AirPods, it's all about rediscovering the world through the values of liberal arts, through the convention of technology and innovative technology.
Okay, I like that.
So that's just one example of how an organization can do that. And that's more of a product driven way of doing it. But there are a lot of other ways to do that as well. And so I want to go into this entire piece on just transactionalism just a little bit, but people don't want to be just safe and healthy like I was talking about on the Apple Watch. We want to support the people who want others to be safe and healthy. You can see the same ethos around, service members, paramedics, firefighters, policemen, things like that. And we also want to see, we don't want to just support those values. We want to support the people who are doing them and doing them well.
So not just the values, but the people that represent those values, kind
Yeah,
of our people, like the people that kind of do things at least to some degree in a similar way. I know there's a lot of like conversations around tribalism and this and that and another thing, but hey, at the core, there's some of this that's healthy. It's a part of who we are. We we do spend time with folks that have similar values, and that's part of our branding genius in our companies if we do it right, right?
for sure. And I think if we really wanted to take competition within a capitalistic setting and tie it into values driven branding, it's whoever champions their values the best who wins.
Oh, write that down, ladies and gentlemen. Whoever champions their values the best will win in the most healthy sense of the word. They will win
Yeah,
in a beneficial sense of the word for
yeah,
everyone.
yeah. And so if you look at what makes Apple the most valuable company in the world, I think we can look at the quote I pulled up from Steve Jobs from that keynote, and you look at how is Apple continually living at the intersection of liberal arts and technological innovation. And I don't think there's a question in any of our minds that they're doing that, and they're doing it
Point.
better than anyone else.
Really good point.
So it's not just about supporting and getting something for ourselves. It's also about making a statement and saying, hey, everybody should be this healthy. Everybody should be this conscious. Everybody should be exploring and experiencing the world in a new and fresh way like this. And so I know it's probably a little bit more of a simple idea, but this is what values driven branding does. It starts a conversation with the consumer, and the consumer then evaluates based the brand itself on what they stand for and how they're standing for it.
And I've heard you say before it brings clarity.
Yep. It brings a lot of clarity. And I was just about to get to that. We're going to get to that in just a second.
Oh, I'm excited. Let's
You're
go.
all good. So next, I want to talk about an individual that I see right now making a huge impact in the area of values-driven branding, or at least is a great example of the power of this concept. And that's Elon Musk.
Ooh, you said the E word. What?
And so Elon is Facebook user.
We got questions coming in. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, bring them in, and we're going to address those a little bit later.
Cool. We're going to have a whole discussion at the very end of this, and we're going to be able to field all of those as much as we can. So let me get through the next 2 points of this and we'll be right there. So Elon is somebody who sees a way that the world can change and he does it. Look at SpaceX, look at the Boring Company, look at Tesla. And now look at Twitter. And Twitter is really the place where I want us to focus our conversation now, because there's a huge shift that's happening in the marketplace in Twitter's favor. And I think it has everything to do with values-driven branding.
I was hoping you were going to bring up Twitter, man. It's kind of a hot topic, but I like it. I think it's a good one.
And for me, I really have very little opinion on, whether it's good or bad. I think it's in this context, it's just fascinating just to see what values-driven branding can do and how to see it in action and to see market movement through the context of this lens. And so Twitter is a company that right now and has always been driven by its values. I think every company has been driven by its values, period. But right now, Elon Musk's takeover, no matter how much you agree or disagree with his stances, represents a tectonic shift in the company's values. And with that shift, an extensive reevaluation of how we as a society are engaging with Twitter and that platform. Right now, new leadership and new values gave Twitter something that few companies ever get, which is a second first impression. I mean, think about that. Elon comes in, he purchases the thing, and suddenly everybody's like, well, maybe I'll just download Twitter to see how it's going. Maybe I'll just check in. If I'm not mistaken, about 2 weeks ago, Elon posted a slide deck that said that Twitter traffic had maybe doubled or tripled, somewhere in those numbers from the second he took over, from the second the purchase cleared to where he presented. It was an incredible amount of growth. And so we're seeing this huge amount of shift going on because the values have changed, because Elon's brought his values to Twitter and people are wanting to see how that plays out. Being able to speak your mind is something that Elon Musk cherishes. And it's, I think, a very big reason why he bought Twitter. For better or for worse, he's brought that value with him to Twitter. The world has flocked back to Twitter because they see Twitter becoming a digital town square like he promised. And he's doubled down on the freedom of speech culture in that company to the point where he's even leaking sensitive data that opens up the company to liability because he believes it's the right thing to do. It's not because it's the right thing maybe for brand longevity, but for brand strength, if that makes sense, because he's doubling down on the values he wants the brand to become. Timothy, are you following on that?
I am. I'm thinking it's like a purge of those who don't really want to ride this train. Like right in the beginning, he's doing that on the hiring and firing side. He's doing that on the audience side. He's doing that on the technology side. He's doing that. He's just bringing very clear, like, this is where we're going. We're either going to go completely bust or we're going to blow this thing up. And it's like WikiLeaks meets Reddit meets the old Twitter. It's like, wow.
And I think the thing that is making Twitter having a really great moment right now is the fact that Elon is so committed to his values and how he expresses those by the way he manages his business. And by the way that plays out in fulfillment to the customer.
And by the way, we're also putting a big Twitter iconic, a logo on the screen right now. So that means something's happening.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't put Apple and Twitter on a presentation for no reason. Like there's a reason these are on the screen, ladies and gentlemen. We want to get clues of how they're doing things, not necessarily whether we agree with them, but why are they doing what they're doing? Like,
for sure.
Let's think about that. I love that, Asher. Thank you.
Yeah. And here's the thing. We can write our ideas in a variety of different ways. It's a healthy market in social media. As somebody that manages social media, I know, there's so many different channels like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We talk a lot about the power of LinkedIn here on the Giver Marketing Network, and there's so many ways that we can share and connect. But right now, Twitter's winning because their values are reinventing or maybe even reverting what it means to engage in the public discourse. But they're doing it on their platform. And so people are like, okay, I want to be a part of the conversation and the values exchanged of what it means to engage in public discourse. And that's happening on Twitter. I think I think this is still maybe one of their slogans, but Twitter has a slogan that says, "It's what's happening." And they say that when you want to log in or you want to sign up. But I think now that's really true. It's what's happening. It's where stuff is happening. And so Elon's done an incredible job of doubling down his values and bringing that to Twitter. One last note on Mr. Musk. I cannot speak for him in everything he does, but I can say that when a company like Apple or someone like Mr. Musk follows through on their values, we perceive integrity. The integrity of the company, its leaders, its values. It's like a flag that gets planted. It's wedged between heavy bedrock instead of thousands of grains of sand. Integrity gives people a reason to trust. Yet, where are our flags planted? In our values. And so we have to evaluate where those are and what those are. And every time we live in and from our values, that flag and subsequently the values and the standard for those values, they all get raised and people see it clearly and they want to be where those flags are planted. In fact, you could even say it's more like a lighthouse. There's an increasingly big amount of clarity that comes from doubling down on values because people know where you stand. They know what you stand for. They know where you stand. They know how you stand for it. And so I think looking at how Apple has done that through their products and how Elon has done that through his management and even just the shift that's happening to Twitter, I think it's an important thing to note as we keep going. And so now I want to just land on this conversation of leadership. And I want you to think about leadership. Leadership is a conversation on values. Think of the people you look up to. It could be a business leader, a politician, a pastor, a friend, a mentor. You would not look up to them if your values did not coincide, if you did not have flags planted in similar places. So when we think about how we become the best in our industries and disciplines, we can't just connect ourselves to the output quality or the output quantity. We have to establish ourselves in something a little bit more profound, which is why we get up in the morning. The values we wake up and fight for, the ideas we partner with day in and day out. This is why the passionate and informed people, the convicted people, can't really be stopped when they're really convinced of something. It's why we all agree when someone raises a glass and says, "Here's to the dreamers." It's why we have a collective moment of compassion when we see someone convinced that the world can be better and we see them trying to make the world a better place. And it inspires us to do the same thing. When Apple became just about doing something cool more than about moving people forward through technology under Jeff Scully before Steve Jobs came back, the company was almost in ruins. It took founder Steve Jobs to reintroduce the company to what made it special, its founding principles and values. Elon Musk is a person who goes out and makes the world better in his eyes through electric vehicles, cutting digital red tape, providing internet to war zones, digging tunnels underground, and quite literally aiming for the stars through SpaceX. Leaders establish themselves not only in what they do, but in why they do what they do. And this is a really powerful part, which is really why our businesses are really a lot more artistic than we think they are. They're really an incredible expression of ourselves, what we stand for, and what we hope to leave the world. So as we look to help market ourselves, I would like to present this paradigm to you. 20% of selling is in what the product is and how the product works. 80% is in who's selling it and why they're making the effort in the first place.
Write that down, ladies and gentlemen. That's a really good way to think about kind of the priorities of how we do and why we do what we do. Really good. Thank you, Asher. Thank you.
For sure. I got two more things for us, and then we can jump into the discussion. When we see a person or organization attaching themselves to something noble, something good, lovely, something we want to see more of in the world, we run to it. I think some of the most maybe prevalent examples, maybe the people who do it better than Apple and Mr. Musk, would probably be religions and governments, because those institutions and the people who drive them persist in their connection and their reconnection to the deeper values that humanity hopes to bear witness to and bring about in and through our lives. It's not about how you're changing the world. It's about why you're changing the world, how the world can be better, your vision, and how what you're doing is getting more people to a better place. Lastly, I want to give you a question. That's a great question, and we'll get to that in a second. I want to give you this question, which is this. What do you hope happens every day after you get up in the morning? What gets you up in the morning? What makes tomorrow exciting and today worth it? And what makes yesterday something that you can look upon with some pride? This was a question that a mentor of mine shared with me, and it's what really led me to starting Good Grain Creative. I wanted to find a way to close the communications gap because I think everybody deserves to be heard, and not everybody knows necessarily how to talk in a way that's going to connect with as many people as possible. And so I decided to start a business that was going to make that really affordable. And so I love partnering with socially conscious businesses and with nonprofits and with just people doing cool stuff and just helping them get their message out. So I think what I'd like to do is just take a minute and think about what you hope happens every day after you get up in the morning and post that in the comments. I'd love to see what motivates everybody that's watching this and just get a sense for where we're at, what our
Love
comment.
that. So you're asking us to share the why or the motivation or the
Yeah.
juice behind not what we do, but like the
Why?
I was thinking about this recently, Asher, and I'll prime the question with kind of my personal answer.
Go
Uh,
for it.
well, the big vision statement we have, and that kind of came out of a conversation similar to this, just with you and others, is okay. What would it look like, or could I be about making sure that the culture I live in and the cultures I have impact on are progressively moving toward good.
Yep.
In other words, uh, helping causes and companies impact culture
Yep.
for good.
Yep.
And then voila, that became our vision statement, a world of causes and companies impacting culture for good.
Yep.
If that's not what I'm doing every day when I wake up, why why wake up, right?
For sure.
So I don't want to go too deep into that one, but that's an example, just an example, and you can go even deeper than that. You go, why would you want culture to be good? Well, because my grandkids are going to be impacted by that, and so are yours. So
Yep.
let's see if we can remove some of the negative Nancy messaging out there, and let's go into the positive movement kind of language. And so anyway, we could talk about that for an hour, but
For
the
sure.
bottom line is that's an example of why we do and the things we do and how we do it and what shapes the decisions that are made in our respective collectives and our networks and our
Yep.
groups and all that. And usually it requires a group to do something bigger,
Yep.
right? So, you have somebody like Steve Jobs or Elon, they're just the face. They're the inspiring leader. That's just one like that's one piece of the puzzle. Like it's not even always the thing. Like it's a part of it, and they do need to remind us of what they're doing. But it's a whole movement that's actually wrapping their arms around that makes it powerful. So hey, Asher, uh, if a ministry leader or a business leader wanted to reach out to you, is it Facebook's good, email good?
Email.
All
So
that?
if the best way to get in contact with me is there's two ways. There's my email. You can send me a message there. That's where I like to keep everything organized. And then I also have a connect page on Good Grain Creative, and that should just be goodgraincreative.com/connect. And then you can just plop yourself in any one of just anywhere in my calendar that works for you.
Great. That sounds awesome. And with that, we're going to put you on the hot seat, bud. We're going
Yep.
to put you on some people call it the love seat, because we're going to be sitting here asking you really fun questions, and we're just going to be chilling in the living room, just kind of talking and kind of having a roundtable discussion. Are you ready for this?
For sure. I'm
All
going to
right.
look at some of the comments as well. I love some of the things that I I saw coming in.
Let's do it. But, well,
Well,
while I bring the guests in, why don't you tackle one of those
yeah.
one of those comments, and then we'll try to hit some of them as we go too.
All good. So yes, Apple has been great at selling experience. I think that's a great way of doing it. Yes, you become like the 5 people you surround yourself with. That's a great point, even in the social idea of this. Is ego-based self-importance considered a value-based expression of as a company? Is that considered integrity or just polarization for prejudice? I think that's a fine line. I think there's a difference between confidence and being braggadocious and obnoxious. I think the thing that we see in somebody, I think in Elon Musk more than a Steve Jobs, I would say, is somebody who just knows what they stand for and is just going out and doing it. There's been a lot of reporting that say that Steve Jobs was a horrible person to work for, and I know that, you know, sometimes with a high functioning individual that can be a lot, because I think they tend to think that the world goes a lot slower than them, which is a little bit egotistical. But I think I always typically disassociate myself even from my own brand. I really try and set the brand as the ideal that I strive towards. But then I also have some influence over either raising that standard or meeting it. So that was a really, really great question. Cool. Balance cut. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
that ego conversation, as we bring in some of the guests and hey, Tim, hey, Oz, good to see you guys. We're here. It's an interesting one, and I don't know that we have time to unpack it all, but I wonder sometimes if we need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, why are we doing this? If it's just for me, that's probably an okay place to start, I guess, but eventually you got to grow out of that.
For sure.
Like if it's just about me only, what about the next generations? What about my neighbors? What about everybody else? Like, how is this going to affect everybody? Ego and self-centeredness are oftentimes linked, and we need a little bit of ego just to wake up in the morning, but doesn't mean it needs to drive us. It's
Right.
like testosterone for a male. It doesn't need to drive you.
Right.
Like it you need some to live, but if you get too much, you'll end up with cancer.
For sure.
So at the end of the day, let's be real about the fact that there are some self interests in mind here.
Yeah.
But that can't be the overarching goal. And I think with a brand, it's really important to have that conversation at some point. And I'd be interested what Tim and Oz and others would have to say about that, because I mean, personal brand, that's a thing right now. That's a thing for a long time.
Yeah.
Like how important is the personal brand versus the company brand? You just alluded to it earlier. It's like, well, they're both important. Sometimes one's way more important at different stages of the organization. It just depends on what's going on. Like you need to think about both. Like, so ego really isn't a dirty word in its neutral sense, if you really look at the etymology of the kind of the baseline of the word. So let's say it for what it is. It's a part of the human experience. It's part of branding, but it can't be the goal. Yeah. Okay, good. So Tim, Oz, any questions? What questions do we have here?
Trying to figure out how to unmute first. I'm not used to this. I'm used to
You got it, Oz. You got it, man. You're in.
Hey, Tim. Hey, Asher. Thank you for all the wonderful training. So off the top of my mind, so obviously I'm an artist. I mean, you see art all around me. You see art on me.
It's cool. I like it.
I elicit a lot of emotion from my clients, because one thing I do is I take their vacation photos and I create things that literally put them back there. What is the best way to get my message out to prospective clients that I can literally create, generational gifts in their home with artwork that they're co-creating with me? The biggest challenge I have is getting in front of the right people that can afford my artwork and are willing to literally trust me enough to send me their photos and co-create the entire process with me. This will build a massive emotion. Everyone I deliver them to cries. So
Yeah. Well, I think what you do is really cool. I'm even just seeing some of the stuff in the background there, and I'm just like, wow, that's really awesome. I work a lot through referral, so I know that's a kind of old-fashioned way of doing it. I know there's a lot of ways we can do that, but something that I find highly complementary of referral is doing some sort of content output that's going to double down on your values. So I'm assuming that you have a process and a way of thinking about your art, right? And so people are interested in that. And so, doesn't matter if it's a video, if it's just maybe sharing some stuff on Instagram, or even if you just add a blog to your website and you just talk about the process of making your last project for a client and how special that was for you, what you got out of the experience. I think giving people more reasons and more opportunities to connect with your values is going to give them more reason to purchase from you, because the people who already are buying from you have some assimilation with your values. And because of that, they love what you do and they love how you do it because it lines up with the way that they see the world and the way they see art. And so I think just finding more ways to share that is going to be a great way, to do that. So I often recommend that businesses blog, that the business owner blogs, and provides ways for other people to connect on a deeper spiritual level.
So you're saying actually
it would have to be a video blog, I would think, because it's artwork.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that. You can that can sometimes be a lot more work, but you can also, you can take, pictures of, your studio, just have some like stock footage or stock photos and just start writing, just being about like, hey, this is a piece I did. It's, for this person, this is how I got connected, talk about the relationship you have with your client, with the person you're delivering for, and then how special it was for you to deliver for that and how
So
that.
are you saying, Asher, to bring a sneak peek into kind of behind the scenes of what's the process or what's happening without giving away proprietary or IP stuff or anything like that? But
For sure.
but
Yeah.
but just bringing, kind of pulling back the curtain and saying, this is the process. This is what to expect, whether it's through video or through written communication or pictures or a combination of all three or whatever it is.
Sure.
Just pull back the curtain is what you're saying. Be that transparent about your process.
Be authentic about it.
Okay, that's good. That's
Because
really good.
My business coach says, give it all away and people will hire you for implementation because people are lazy. So one of the ideas that I had, which you really, really coalesced in my mind, was my LinkedIn post for Thursday. This is the artwork that made her cry as the headline.
Yeah.
I think that's going to pull a lot of people in. I'm going to show the piece of artwork that literally brought my insurance agent to tears because she said to me, oh my God, I feel the cold in my face, the wind in my hair. I smell the diesel oil. I am there. This will be generational in my home, and making her a co-creator, naming it. So that'll be my next LinkedIn post. Thank you.
And I think I'd be interested to see how that turns out, because what you're really doing is you're inviting people into that story. And what we do when we invite people into that story, into different stories, we invite an emotional connection, not just a logical connection. But when we when we invite emotional connection, we also invite a connection in the area of values and what we esteem in life. So I'm very excited for that post that you just told me. So.
Good question, Oz. And when you post that, tag some of your people, man. Tag us, tag Asher, tag me. We want to be a part of that journey. Like, we want to be a part of your story. That kind of thing.
Asher, I'll connect with you on LinkedIn as soon as this is over.
Come on. There you go.
Thank you.
Tim, what do you got for Asher? Maybe the audience might want to hear another question or two.
Well, I think your examples of Apple, for just off the top of my head, and this whole idea of building a tribe, basically that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Having raving fans, in my case, and what I write about, brand evangelist.
Yeah.
So what's your good news? What's your gospel message? How are you contributing to the world? And I think that one of the things that a lot of these larger corporations are bumping up against is we're seeing a miss in the values that we thought that they embraced, and all of a
Yes.
sudden these values that are being presented or coming out. Disney would be a great example of this.
You read my
Where
mind.
you're family oriented, you're creating experiences, people are connecting to this great music, and all of a sudden there's this introduction to something that wasn't on the radar before. So I just wanted to kind of speak to the importance of the value of how is it we're showing up with consistency around the values that we embrace. This is where Twitter is having some struggles because it had a tribe that
Yes.
could count on a certain approach. Now the new tribe leader is expanding and changing, shifting slightly, and the values are, in my mind, changing slightly and attracting, obviously, a whole lot of people.
Yeah. So I think let's go to the Disney example, because I actually don't think Disney's betraying any of their values. I think they're just emphasizing a value that doesn't mean as much as they thought it did to everybody else, which is inclusivity. And so that's been something that Disney's always been about. Anyone can have a dream, anyone can wish upon a star, and it should come true because it makes you happy. And so it's one of those things where they're doubling down on it in a way. They're doubling down on that value in a way that's not connecting with their broader audience, and it's spelling a lot of trouble for their tribe. And there's a lot of people that are looking for other tribes, other places to look at, to get their entertainment from, because their interpretation of one of their core values is a lot different than everybody else's was. If I can put it that succinctly, does that?
Or maybe not even everybody else's, but like a majority
of their internal audience,
of their core audience was not necessarily interested in doubling down on these aspects. But hey, they're putting kind of a line in the sand in a weird sort of way right now, and saying, hey, either you're with us or you're not in this inclusivity conversation.
yeah,
And so, like, just because some people agree and some people don't agree with, a Musk or a Disney or a this or
yeah.
Jobs even. I was listening to an AI interview of what Steve Jobs would have said to Joe Rogan recently.
Interesting.
It's a fascinating YouTube search. Joe Rogan, Steve Jobs. Just check it out. It's super weird. It's like Steve Jobs is not alive, but he's sitting there talking with Joe Rogan through his AI.
Yeah.
It's basically a bot that was built for this interview. It's like, what the heck? And you're sitting there going, I don't know if I like everything. Now that I'm hearing him being interviewed with some really poignant questions, but he drew lines in the sand and he said, we're going this way. And he made a lot of enemies and he made a lot of friends and he just went for it. And there you go. Not everybody's interested in jumping in a ship with Christopher Columbus either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I like this conversation. It's super interesting, intriguing. And I know some of us got to go top of the hour here, but these are some great questions. Let's continue this in the comments and the dialogue. And Asher, you've done a really good job today. And out of respect for everybody's time in the panel here and everything, I would just want to kind of put a little comma right there and say, to be continued. Let's have this dialogue in the comments. And I know there's other comments and questions and different things. Keep them coming, ladies and gentlemen, whether you're watching the replay or watching this live. We want to be able to have this kind of greater communication effort with Asher and what he's brought to us with value-driven branding. Man, good job today, Asher. Thank you. Really appreciate you guys and all those who have been asking questions, and Stacy behind the scenes putting everything together. We'll see you next Tuesday, same channel, same time. And we try to start on time, but depending on technical and different things like that, we're usually able to stream something right in this hour. So we really appreciate you, and keep those questions coming. God bless you guys. Talk to you soon.